What's up, y'all? Welcome to this week's episode of Music in the Minor League. This week, we're joined by Andi Hendricks and Taylor Gwyn of Blade Job. They're also in the local band here in Houston called Bayou City Kids. That's where we first met them this January of 2024. Played a couple shows with Bayou City Kids. Finally got to see Blade Job. They had a new EP come out about 2 weeks ago. The EP is called Pre-Op. It's available on all streaming networks and can be purchased via their Bandcamp site. We really had a great conversation with them. They talked about music, what it's like being trans in the Houston music scene and beyond. Before we get to the episode, we'll get our housekeeping out of the way. First thing, if you like the episode, share it with your friends. It's the best way to get the show exposure, to give the bands we talk to the recognition they deserve. Everyone's out there working really hard in the independent music scene, and we're just trying to do our small part to help. Two, if you want to be on the show, hit us up, slide into our DMs, go to our website. We're going to get a form there very soon. Our website's called mimopod.com. It's MIMLPOD.com. Let us know, man. We'd love to talk to you. Three, Blade Job's got a show coming up. They'll be in Beaumont, Texas at the Art Studio on Saturday, April 26th. Be sure to go to that show. It's going to be a good one, man. I remember we played the Art Studio. I grew up going to shows at the Art Studio. What do we have coming up? Well, on April 25th, we're doing a So Far Sound show. Look up their website. I know it's going to be in downtown. I know Matt Harlan's playing it with us. It's going to be really cool. On the 26th, we're going to be at House of J, which is on the edge of downtown, playing the acoustic showcase put on by Gut Wrench Booking. It's going to be us, Slummer, Dirty Kid Schmelly, Jim Williams, the Real McCoys, Dave Tama and the Hired Punks, and a few other folks that are just killer. I just can't remember off the top of my head. So make sure to check that out, man. Come out. I think it's like $7. There's going to be like 10 bands. So it's really going to be a good deal. Everyone's playing like 25-minute sets. So it'll be a lot of fun. Then on May 2nd, we'll be down at the Old Quarter with Steve Taglier from June Bird, who you heard on the show a while back. We'll be down there. He'll be doing an acoustic solo set, and we'll be doing a trio set. It's going to be a lot of fun. That's it for now. Hope you enjoy the episode. We're going to get to it now with the song Love Sick off the new EP called Pre-Op from Blade Job. Hope you dig it. See you on the other side. All right, y'all, welcome to this week's episode of Music in the Minor League. Today we are here with Andi Hendricks and Taylor Gwyn of Blade Job, also Bayou City Kids. They have a brand new EP that just came out for Blade Job called Pre-Op. Okay, sorry, I had to remember.
I don't know if we're supposed to talk yet.
No, you got it.
Are we supposed to talk
yet?
Yeah,
you can come in any time.
Okay, I didn't know if you were doing like a long intro.
That's like the whole reason we're here.
He totally goes like, all of a sudden he comes
We're
really
like,
professional.
I'm waiting for him to be like,
We mostly talk, and then we just kind of like make y'all sit and listen to our conversation and be like,
Oh, hell yeah.
that works.
well, we have our band, our EPs like, shh. Anyway, health.
The
out,
adults are
things go.
speaking.
Oh my God.
So you do have the new EP.
Yes.
It's out. It will be streaming by the time this is released. I actually got to listen to it today. like 6 minutes of punk rock goodness.
Tell me everything.
I really enjoyed it. Shit, I even looked it up. Is it Love Sick's the last song? That's like my favorite.
Love Sick is the last one.
That was the one at the show. I was like, dude, yeah, because mostly because the bass line was sick, and I still go for there.
You know, like sometimes it's been a fun exercise in learning that I don't have to always write super complicated stuff, especially as a bassist, because a lot of times there's stuff that if I were looking at like a transcription of what I was playing, I'd be like, man, this is a really like quote unquote boring bass line. But there's so much like, I don't know, there's so much space that Taylor brings when she comes in with these ideas, because she comes in, she's a self-taught guitarist, and she comes in and she's just like, hey, here's this weird thing that I'm going to do for 2 minutes.
Self-taught is code for bad a lot of the time. It's code for bad, and sometimes you add but interesting, which is where I think I exist.
I don't know, if anything, it makes you suck more, because it's like you can play that good and you're just self-taught, like, oh, I just play guitar and I got all these killer leads. Like, it's not okay.
It's like when people can play piano by ear. We're really
well, it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, you know, okay, so I have like I played trombone and tuba back in middle school and high school, so like I have a music theory background.
Same,
but
we're
I never
tuba sisters.
I never
here.
I never tied it to guitar, right? Like I never sat down and like learned the fretboard map. I don't know like chord shapes really or anything, but like, you know, anything that you do long enough, like I've had a lot of people describe my stuff as very deconstructed, as if I'm doing it on purpose, and realistically it's deconstructed because I don't know how to actually build the thing, right? So it's like
some of the chord shapes she makes, she'll play these like, she'll be playing some insane jazz chord, and I'm like, you realize like you could just be playing like a G sharp right there. Like you don't have to stretch from 5 to 9.
Right, there's ways to do it.
You're making this so much hard. But the thing is, like, she approaches these things like with weird chord shapes or with just a weird approach in general, and it does obviously have an effect on the sound, right?
This is the thing that gets I remember I think it was after Pretty and Punk, I was talking to somebody who was like, dude, I love y'all. He's like, y'all are so 90s. And I was like, yeah, man, because like we are very 90s, but we're not like we don't just like sound like Jawbreaker. We sound like we listen to a lot of 90s stuff, but we don't sound like we're like literally from the 90s, if that distinction makes sense. But like I was like, yeah, dude, I'm like, you know, I've listened to like a lot of Sonic Youth. I think Sonic Youth and Placebo are mainly where my love for playing the ugliest chord you've ever heard for 3 minutes straight comes from. And I remember I brought up Sonic Youth and he was like, oh, like he was enthusiastically like, dude, I knew it. And I was like, hang on. I was like, you're a little too certain that I look up to Thurston Moore. And now I'm wondering if that's like a personality based thing. One of my favorite
what
jokes
did I do to make you think I'm such a monster?
Like, so I'm in a weird place where like I play lead and sing lead, right? And you don't see that super often. Andi O is our rhythm guitarist. He is fantastic. He is like the perfect rhythm guitarist for me, because he like every time I bring a new song, I watch him and Andi like figure out like how to make like real music out of whatever noisy shit I'm doing, right? And so like that's why I always compare me and Andi O's like guitar relationship to like Thurston Moore and Lee Ronaldo, right? Because like Lee Ronaldo was not the front person. He's just doing all the real guitar work, and then Thurston Moore just gets to go up there and make whatever fucking noise he wants.
My joke is when she says that, I always go, and I'm Kim Deal.
Yeah, which first of all, like I think Andi thinks I'm like jokingly mad about it. I'm like genuinely a little upset including now. Well, because it also gets in the way of my next joke of being like, yeah, you know, I'm like Andi O is Thurston is Lee Ronaldo and I'm Thurston Moore, and then I'm like, except you know, me and Andi don't like. And then you saying you're Kim Deal just makes that whole thing even dumber and weirder.
It's not the same at all.
No, it's not.
So do you just sit with your guitar and like when you're like Andi says, when you're playing something that maybe looks weird to everyone else, you're just going off the sound, right?
Guitar is mostly okay. So when I'm writing, it's genuinely just like trial and error sometimes, because you know everybody, even if you don't like know what the chord is called, everybody has like a few hand shapes you make, right? That are just kind of your go-tos. But for one, This is not an endorsement, but I'd be happy to be endorsed if they wanted. But I'm kind of old school. I have a couple like music books that I keep around, and one of them is this big book of guitar chords. It's literally just like 800 pages of just fingering diagrams.
Are you talking about the grimoire?
Right? The guitar grimoire, yeah.
Shout out Guitar Grimoire.
Literally,
right? Yeah. Do you guys
genuinely, like,
you guys want to sponsor us? We'll take it.
Genuinely, that is like the one book series that I think is still worth buying in the age of YouTube and Google.
Dude, even just having like, if you have nothing other than just the scales and modes books, just having access to all those scales is insane.
No, it's killer. But like, so I'll literally just open it up and find like, and I'll just legitimately like, okay, page 300, throw a dart at it. And I'm like, all right. And I just make a claw. And I'm just like, where does this sound good, right? But the thing is, like, in addition to that, I have like fairly big hands. I'm not Paul Gilbert or anything, but you know, like, so when I'm doing like trial and error, I'm kind of naturally like wandering into like 7th and 9th chords because that's just where my pinky falls on the fretboard, right? And like, and you know, also like I have, you know, like I said, I've listened to a lot of Placebo and like Sonic Youth and Queens of the Stone Age, and like there's all these bands that are like, that taught me that like, hey man, you know what sounds really cool is if you take the most sputtery Velcro fuzz you have and you play like some weird jazz chord that was popular in the 30s, and then it just sounds like a nightmare, and you just like make a power chord out of that and just shift it up and down the board. And like that's
literally what you do during Lovesick, right?
It's what I do in like, I mean, not like half of our songs. But yeah, like I don't know, man. I do what sounds cool. I wouldn't recommend anyone be like self-taught the way I am, because I would probably be a lot more like if I had done everything the right way, and if I'd been like really studious about it in the way you're supposed to, I would probably be like a super like I can play in any band tonight kind of guitarist. But at the same time, it's like I do think that a lot of my writing voice I owe to being self-taught, because like the one advantage of that is that if you don't follow how anybody teaches it, then you just end up kind of unique. Like you end up doing stuff that doesn't really sound like anything else, because
we were talking about this the other day. There's so many like iconic parts that have been written that you'll like, you go into the shed or your bedroom, whatever, and you're sitting there, you're hammering this part out, and everything in your brain is like, yeah, I'm doing everything 100% correct. Like I'm playing this the way, it's the easiest way, it's the way that makes the most sense. It doesn't sound right. And then you go watch a live video and you're like, oh yeah, this guy doesn't know how to play a G sharp properly, and he plays whatever, like a ska chord or some weird inverted jazz chord, and you're like, well, obviously, like that's why I couldn't hit the sound, because no one would ever think to go into that chord shape, but that person for whatever reason was like, yeah, no, this is what's natural for me. And so there's, I don't know, it's like
famously Kurt Cobain, the reason why a bunch of Nirvana songs don't sound right if you play them as a normal power chord is because he wouldn't play with his ring and his pinky, he would just bar with his ring on the, but he was, you know, Kurt Cobain, not known for his like precision as a guitarist, right? So like when he's playing a power chord that's normally the E, A, and D strings, he's accidentally playing the G string as well, same as if it's rooting on the A, he's accidentally playing the B. And so there's like this extra little bit above where you expect a power chord to be that just kind of like especially when it's the B string, because then it's not staying in that same like in the notes you're expecting, right? Yeah. And like that's like a huge part of like, that's the first thing you teach somebody if they can't figure out how to get Smells Like Teen Spirit to sound right, is that it's like, no, you're playing the chord correctly, and that's where you're going
you're
wrong.
You're doing it like an educated person would do it.
Like, yeah, you gotta pretend you're some kid from Seattle who's like never heard of a guitar before.
Well,
like,
I think sometimes as musicians, like that kind of circles back, like we get lost in the sauce sometimes, and like you know, of course I'm a bass player, so I'll name drop Vic Wooten. Like Vic Wooten's got, of course, whether you like the guy or not, he's got some really,
call him Victor, that's how tight they are.
Yeah, we're bros.
I call him by his first 3 letters.
All Vicky.
But you know, he has a lot of really interesting things where he talks about just changing the way we approach stuff. And a lot of times as a musician, you're so focused on like proving that you're a good musician, when a lot of times you need to like pivot your focus and just be like, yeah, I know I'm a good musician. What is the audience going to actually connect with, right? Because like as a bass player, I can noodle up and down the neck for 40 minutes straight. Nobody's going to give a shit.
And then you get fired.
Yeah, exactly. I get fired and nobody gives a shit, right?
As someone who stopped playing bass because I wanted to like noodle more and get more nerdy about guitar pedals.
Yeah.
Also,
so like there's something to be said though about like when somebody comes into the group with this insane like weird technical energy, there's something to be said about having this backbone that's like, okay, cool. Like you can come in with this insane energy. We were talking about it on the phone the other day and I compared it, funny enough, because she used to climb. And I was like, yeah, it's like you're free climbing and we're behind you like 5 feet with all the gear. So if you fall, we're still there to make sure that everything's not going to go to shit, you know?
I also find it very funny that like Andi was like making fun of me for like talking about rock climbing so much.
Oh my God. We got into such a huge...
No. But I think it's so funny that you were like, oh, rock climbing. I'm this real rich white kid shit.
I'm trying to connect with you.
I'm trying to find commonality.
I'm trying to find something you'll understand.
But and then 5 minutes later, you're like, oh yeah, I'm gonna make like a rock climbing analogy for how our band works, and I'm like, but this isn't how rock climbing works.
I'm not a rock climber.
Well, then what?
It makes sense to us.
It's not a rock scientist.
I don't know shit about cheese. I'm not gonna like talk about how you play bass and blade job and be like, well, you're really more like, it's really killer because I feel like most people would be like a Gouda here, but you're really more of like a Brie.
You're like a Roquefort. You're like a Roquefort.
You know, the Brie is more creamy.
Oh man.
Also, I love how you like brought a punk band on here and we're immediately like, so Victor Wooten. Like,
Exactly.
Y'all have had the most like nerdy breakdown of like method that anyone, I think, to this point.
To this point, yeah.
No, dude,
Most people's like make sound with guitar.
I am an insufferable nerd about my music.
No, if Taylor were like 1 degree more obsessive about music, she would be totally insufferable.
Dude, I think I'm already insufferable, to be honest with you. But like
she was giving me shit on the drive over because when I'm not driving to work, if I'm just running errands or whatever, I listen like a fucking civilized person to NPR.
That's solid. You pay for it. You might as well.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. This is the hill you die on, Taylor.
Fancy. Everybody pays taxes in this room. How adult of you.
Says the person with the rock climbing background. Okay.
Yeah.
Throw stones in a glass house.
I told you.
Boulder. You don't even need to buy rope for it.
That's even worse.
Bouldering is cheaper than playing basketball. The shoes don't cost as much.
But
Bouldering is just getting shoes and going and finding a fucking rock jump on. Like,
I love that she's like a decade removed from rock climbing and she is still this defensive about it.
I'm like, you have to understand, I used to be such a big jock that now I have like really big like trans Uncle Rico energy. Like we'll just be like,
right there.
Dude, I swear to God, there's a Jack in the Box in Eastwood. There's a Jack in the Box in Eastwood where I used to live, where like every single time my roommates hated me because we'd be in the drive-thru at like 1 a.m. and they have this ladder that's like 9 feet off the ground, and every single time I saw that ladder, I'd be like, you know, when I used to boulder, I could climb that. I'm like, I know they have the ladder stashed for like security mode, but I'm like, I could have gotten on that roof, and everybody's like, Taylor, please.
Did you roll up in your orange van?
How much you want to bet I could trans a football over the mountains?
The funniest thing, I never get to tell this joke, but like the old gym that I used to go to had like any other building, it has like a ladder up to the roof for maintenance, and I'm like, this is a rock climbing gym. Couldn't you have put like a rock climbing route? Like, right, yeah. It feels kind of disingenuous to just have like a normal ladder out here.
Like, what is this crap?
I'm like, anybody who's gonna work on this building, like, we're not like,
you expect the janitorial staff to, in their free time, come in and climb rocks.
But that's the secret, is that like when you first start rock climbing, it's just ladders, bro. When you first start rock climbing, well, like literally, it'll just be like you're just climbing up like a little ladder. It's super comfy. Beginner rock climbing routes are generally.
Dude, I would be be so pissed if I paid for a beginner.
I got the shoes. I got the special shorts, the harness.
It's just fucking
No,
ladders.
it's not literally a ladder, but
I
it's
have one of those.
But like when you
Stayed at home.
when you first start climbing,
I paid
it's like
$40.
everything is in the natural place that your arm and your leg is going to end up, so that you're like getting comfortable with the idea of like climbing something, right?
Okay.
You are the most
I
adorable.
didn't want to talk about fucking rock climbing, y'all.
You are the most adorable, sweet little nerd. I love it.
Here's the thing. I know I'm insufferable. I'm insufferable to myself. Like, I was an only child. I'm the type
No,
that...
not at all. I don't even get that energy.
So like, right? So like, I came up as like a kid and still as an adult. Like, I'll just kind of like chat to myself about shit. Cause like, dude, none of my friends want to hear about basketball as much as I want to talk about basketball. So sometimes I just listen to a YouTube video and I talk back at it, right?
Every time there's like two guys in the Houston punk scene that every time we're at a show and she sees one of them, she like makes a beeline so she can go talk about basketball.
Nice.
I'm sorry that the Rockets are having one of the most interesting turnarounds in professional sports right now, and nobody
They
else
are.
appreciates it.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah. And by the way, go Cougs.
Hell yeah. I should have been paying more attention to March Madness so far, but this is a jam. We're standing on the edge of a cliff here. You have to understand. I'll get lost.
I'm also
I
here.
think a good way to redirect this, I'm just interested in y'all's banter. Like, how long have y'all known each other?
Yeah.
So
About 2 years?
That's it?
a little
No
over
Okay,
2 years.
Hang on. Can I tell the story?
Sure.
Okay. So,
Oh God, I'm gonna get embarrassed.
so technically, it is Transgender Day of Visibility when we're recording this, by the way. So it isn't
Ooh, I
especially-
noticed you guys don't have the cameras set up.
It isn't especially.
Yeah, we don't have that
I
kind
will
of
say
money.
we are in fact
It's okay.
corporeal at the
This
moment.
is
We are
yes,
visible.
I'm touching. well, no, I'm not. I'm touching myself.
Just chill out. That's phrasing. Anyway, so going back to like the very, very beginning, right? I've been tight with Travis, who's in Bayou City Kids, for God, I've probably known him since like 2018, 2019 at least, right?
It's been a while.
And so, we all went through COVID, all that happened. And then back in like 21, I think, was the first Houston Punk Fest that happened post-COVID, right? Like vaccines had rolled out. This is back when Punk Fest did it in November.
It was
And
also my first time playing.
so I remember, and I went out there, and do you mind if I tell the story? I know it embarrasses you a little bit, but I really like it.
I don't care. Like honestly, I think it's in the spirit of the season.
Yeah.
Please embarrass me.
So I had been out for context, I've been out for, God, actually, I guess we're coming up on like my 6-year anniversary of being on HRT.
Yeah, because you're like 3 ahead of me.
Yeah. So, because I started in 2019, I know I got my first shot somewhere in April. Traniversary is the term, although that's kind of in a gray area where I don't know if it's not the slur, but it's a little close for cis
Slightly.
people to say it. But anyway,
Yeah.
So, So I had been out for like 4 years at this point. Andi was like kind of on the verge. Like Andi knew and was kind of looking down the barrel of changing everything.
I think I
it's-
had already come out to my
But you weren't-
immediate family, but I wasn't like I may have
You
already
weren't
been on
presenting as a woman,
right. I
yeah,
may have
like-
already even been on hormones, but it was like I hadn't come out to everyone.
And so it was
publicly.
really funny because like I show up and Andi is immediately like, oh my God, there's a cool trans girl here. And she's like, I can't go say hi to her though, because like everybody else will know that I'm a trans woman. And she's like, and it's like that's not how it works, but like I get it. We all think that, right? Yeah. But it was really funny because she's like saying this and she's getting all nervous about it. And then Trav, who's like, obviously our mutual friend, our singer, blah blah blah. I'm not in BCK at this point, mind you. I'm seeing them as a fan. But so Trav like knew me already and was like, that's Taylor. He's like, she's like a super normal, chill person. Just go say hi to Taylor, right? And Andy's like, no, I can't. I'll die, right? And so like
this is how I operate all of my life decisions. By the way, no, I can't. I'll die.
It's the next Punk Fest. Andi came out like probably 4 or 5 months before that, maybe a little longer.
Yeah, because that was the one that was in the beginning of the year, right? And I had come out in like November.
Yeah, and so I go there and I see that like Trav's band has a trans girl playing bass now, and I'm like, oh shit, I should go say hi. I should make a friend, right? And I go up there, and I remember I think I bought a shirt from Nate, our washboard player, Travis's brother, and I remember I was talking to him, and I was like buying a don't get me wrong, like I wanted to support my friend's band, but sometimes you buy the t-shirt as like a conversational gateway to go say hi to someone that you want to like make friends with. And so I go and I buy this t-shirt, and the whole time I'm talking to Nate, and I'm kind of like glancing at Andi, trying to like draw her into the conversation, and she's like terrified. Like she's like deer in the headlights. Like, so like in later I would figure out that like she hadn't really made friends with other trans folks yet, I guess. But so like so eventually I leave, and I'm like, well, okay, I guess I have like a Bayou City Kids t-shirt now, right? Which at the time I was stoked about. Now I'm kind of frustrated because I'm in the fucking band, so I'm like, I could have gotten this for free if I was going to say like 6 months.
I think it's been long enough. You can have your $20 back.
So like I should send Trav an invoice for a refund. But so like 4 or 5 months later, I saw y'all at like Black Magic or something. I saw y'all play the last show before I joined the band, and me and Andi finally like actually had a conversation outside Black Magic, and we hung out I think once back when I had like an acoustic solo thing I was thinking about starting. And so like she messed around with like playing her upright, but like with an actual like bow, like a little more traditional than we do it in BCK. But you know, we had like one practice like that, and at the time I knew that BCK was like looking for a new guitarist, and I wasn't going to be that person, but I was kind of, hey, what's up, right? And so eventually, you know, at this point we're talking about a couple years ago now.
It would have been about
Trav hit me up
2 years ago when you joined, I think.
Yeah, our first show was June 2 years ago. So I probably joined around April. But so Trav hit me up and was like, hey, here's a bunch of these new songs. And then me and Andi like you know, just started. And Andi always had can I say weed? Can I talk?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Andi always had weed to smoke, and so I would always find an excuse like after practice or on Wednesdays for movie night or whatever. I'd just be like, it was like they were trying to befriend like a stray cat, and they would just like hold a joint out to me like right, and I would just like show up in their house and like eat food and get high, and like eventually they kind of re-socialized me into being like a person that can actually talk to strangers. Cause
I mean, so like for me, the whole impetus of Blade Job though was like we were doing BCK for a while, and it was
Andi really wanted to do this one t-shirt idea of like LGBCK.
Oh yeah.
admittedly very funny, but I was like,
everybody else in the band is not queer.
Well, the thing is,
so it's kind of like
the thing that I kind of like talked to Andi about was I was like, I'm like, we're queers in a band, but it's like
it's not
BCK is not a queer band. And the thing is that like I find the title of like queer band and the process of like making queer merch and stuff, I think it's like kind of sacred, because if you don't, because like if you don't treat it as sacred, then it turns into how like, oh, you're at a bar in June and now the fucking Visa sticker on the window is a rainbow. And it's like, dude, I don't give a shit, right? Like the person I was dating when I transitioned, like I remembered UGG made these like slippers that were really cute and super like, you know, they were in like trans pride colors, and I was like, oh my god, I was really stoked because they like actually had them in my size, which is shoe sizes are kind of a bitch when you're 6'4" and a woman, right? But like I didn't even fit into fucking basketball shoes back when I was a boy, and now I'm having to deal with like heels and shit. Like fuck me. There's a reason I just wear Vans nowadays. But yeah, so I remember like one of the first things I learned about like what a lot of people call rainbow capitalism, right? Is like all these places like don't bother shopping somewhere in June that isn't like equally supportive of you in like October, right? UGG doesn't make shoes in my size outside of June, right? It's like that's when they drop their stuff to get their money from us, and like without getting too political, that's kind of how it's always been, right?
The whole point of that tangent
are always like, the
whole point of that tangent is to get to where I was getting really frustrated, not with anyone in particular, but just with the fact that like here I am doing this creative musical thing, doing this thing that is an outlet, and not through any fault of anyone. There are certain topics that this band just doesn't cover, right?
And yeah,
aside from being like boo cops, yay, getting inebriated, they don't really take a stance on stuff like that, which is totally fine. So I basically,
and don't get it twisted, they're all like hyper supportive.
Yeah, but for them, it's about, hey, the band is here to have a party. We're gonna party, you know. And so I bugged Taylor for, God, I don't even know, like at least 6 months.
Yeah, literally, like the reason that I eventually, like, I genuinely like agreed to make what would end up being Blade Job, so Andi would stop bugging me about how she like, because I was like, listen, I was like, if you'll stop harping on BCK making gay merch, then I was like, I will, because like I had written songs before, but I'd never had a band like really get off the ground, and so I agreed. I was like, I know I can do this. And I told Andi we'd start looking for a drummer. And then eventually Solomon, who plays drums for us in BCK as well, one of the songs on the EP, Claustrophiliac, the second song, is like this big, stompy kind of that's one of the ones where I really wear that like Josh Homme influence on my sleeve. And Solomon really likes Queens of the Stone Age as well. And so that's the song that kind of convinced him, like, all right, yeah, I'll play drums for y'all. And he's in another band with Andi our rhythm guitarist, called Casanova Caravan. And so he asked me and Andi, he's like, hey, I have this friend who might want to play rhythm guitar, who I remember Solomon was specifically like, he really likes Jack White. And I was like, okay. I was like, bet. Jack White is like the perfect middle point between me and someone who actually knows how to play guitar. Cause I'm like, he's very bluesy, but also he does insane stuff with his pedal board. So it's a really good meeting point between like a self-taught weirdo like me and a much more traditional guitarist, I'd say, like Andi O. But yeah, I mean, kind of, I don't know. Like we all agreed on it. We got together like April. This turned into a band origin story at some point. But
I mean, that was the question originally.
Well, the question was how long we've known each other. But
I mean, yeah.
But yeah, so I mean, it's been 2 years. But you have to realize that it's been 2 years of like, we've played probably 30 shows together at this point between BCK and Blade Job, maybe 40.
But another thing, like
most of those shows, we've loaded all our stuff up and left together, and like
that's what I was gonna say. Like on top of only knowing each other for 2 years, like even now, like I'm trying to get out more and socialize more, but like I don't have a ton of like trans friends. It's hard in general to, unless you're just meeting people like through social media, and even then parasocial relationships are weird because it's like, yeah, you kind of know this person, you know. But like, so Taylor and I, like, I'm a few years older than she is, but she's a few years further along in transition, so we have this weird relationship where we take turns like being the big sister,
right?
And so there was a lot of stuff that, like, when I was trying to get the band off the ground, Taylor's already been doing this whole trans thing for a few years. She's kind of acclimated to this new life, and I am still very much like, I'm 6 months to a year into this, and I'm very like piss and vinegar, the same way you feel the first time you go through puberty, right? So it was a lot of like, no, like there's a lot of really fucked up stuff going on, and we are these people who do this thing where we have this creative outlet. Why are we not, why are we not doing something in this queer vein, whatever it is? And like to have the boys be willing to jump in and be like, hey, like basically, and we've kind of talked about it, like they're basically like, yeah, y'all are driving the truck. Like we're just here to...
The boys are just here to be pretty.
Basically,
they're just arm candy.
Yeah, and wear bucket hats.
That's what I say in my band too.
I do find it extremely funny that like they're
that we're in a trans band and we're like, the boys are just here for you guys to gawk at.
I find
Andy's
going
to take his shirt off about halfway through the set. Don't worry.
I find it very funny that me and Andi are so much larger than the two actual men in our band. I just find that like that's like infinitely amusing to me.
It is pretty funny. We love our short kings. What can I say?
Okay, but when ladies are tall, you guys are very elegant.
I don't know about that. I'm always running into shit.
No, I didn't see you run into anything the other night, first of all.
It's interesting because like there's no... A lot of the time, I don't like being as huge as I am, right? Yeah. And that's not even so much a trans thing. It's the same thing. I'm just not... I either want to be the center of attention or I want to be invisible, right? Which I don't think that's a particularly rare thing for front people.
I was going to say, for musicians in general, I feel like that's
pretty normal.
But but again, when I say that, like, there's no time that I like being as big a person as I am as like being on stage, because like it really does kind of aid in that kind of larger than life energy you want to give when you're on stage. You know what I mean?
Okay, I know you and I have talked about this like 50 times since this weekend, but like, yeah, I've always hated how large in proportion I am. But
and
caveat
for context,
to that,
since there's not any like cameras or anything, Andy's like 6'1" or 2" or something, and I'm 6'4".
I was 6'3" before I started hormones.
I'm tall enough that it makes sense that I'm so
we're
obsessed with how
we're
I used
both
to be
over
good at
6
basketball.
foot, and we both weigh pounds. You know, so
There's about 450 pounds of trans woman on this couch.
Yeah, I'm surprised
right
this couch is holding up. So we played this show, and I'm gonna go into like a whole long thing, and I talked about it on social media already, but like I realized the next morning when I was talking about it a little more, there was this person that came up at our show for the EP release, and they came up to the merch table, and they were like, "Oh, my dad plays in this other band. He gave me $10 for the merch table," and they were
like one of the other bands that played with us,
Yeah.
for reference.
and they were not being like, they weren't being weird, but I could tell they were some kind of uncomfortable or awkward, even though they were telling me how much they liked our band and they were gonna tell all of their friends about us and all this other stuff. And while I'm having this interaction with this person, in my brain, I am literally going like, this is a baby trans girl, but I'm not going to be the weirdo. I'm not going to push it. I'm not going to do anything, whatever. And then sure enough, 10 minutes later, this guy, and Tim, I am so sorry for misjudging you, man. Like, shit is weird and the world is weird right now. But this guy who I'd run across earlier in the night, and I'm just like, yeah, we're out at a show. He's playing a show that my band booked, but I'm like, I don't know this guy personally. I can't get
also realistically, just with where things are at,
right.
Like,
and so I'm like, I don't know this guy.
If you talk to a trans person and they're a little cagey before they know you, like we're not trying to be dickheads. It's just that, like, man, shit, like, realistically,
it's a dangerous
shit is
time.
spooky.
I mean,
right now.
like,
And
someone that I follow on TikTok, because he's a trans man who's a pit master up in Waco, just got attacked outside of his house like 2 nights ago.
Yeah, dude,
They
like,
got the
it's
shit beat out of him.
It's crazy around here.
So this guy Tim comes up.
Not specifically around here, but
This guy Tim comes up, and this is a guy who I've already kind of been like, oh, I don't know. I guess like, be wary, keep at a distance just in case. Comes up with the kid that I was just talking to 5 minutes ago and goes, do you want to tell her? And I obviously I knew what it was, but like
you good? Do I need to tell this part?
This girl comes up and properly reintroduces herself to me, right? And lets me know that she's just recently figured out that she's transgender.
For context, this is the same kid. We're just saying girl now because of plot devices.
Yeah. And there were, like, I don't want to paraphrase or share specifics of what she said, but the fact that this band that I had to beg Taylor for 6 months to do with me, right? The fact that not even a year later, we're doing an EP release. Like, we were competing with so many shows that night, and we still had a packed house. We still made good money. Like, and then this kid is able to come out and like be who she really is. And then the other thing that I realized, and this is probably going to get weird if she ever sees me in person, but like, I was talking about it with my wife the next morning, and I'm like, I'm realizing that build, hair, the way they were dressed, hiding in a hoodie, all this other stuff, the age they were, I'm like, I literally just had a conversation with myself. Like, not even just a younger trans person, but like, this could have been someone who did what I did and denied themselves for almost 2 decades. And instead, their dad was with them at my show, and they were able to come out and not have to feel like shit about who they are for, even if it was just the 40 minutes that we're on stage, right? And like, it's been very overwhelming, because there's like this mixture of like, God, I wish I had that when I was that age. you know. But then there's also this aspect of being like, yeah, but like you're that person for at least this one kid right now, you know.
And
like,
especially the thing is that, like, you know, we're both in our 30s, right? And like there's a decent amount of trans folks that we know that are like our age, but like you really don't see many trans folks that are older than like the millennial generation, right?
We talked about this the other day. Like a lot of our people that we can look up to are these ethereal beings, like Marsha P. Johnson, and like these like.
Well, and like even if you're talking about like, you know, in punk, obviously you talk about Laura Jane Grace a lot, but even then, it's like as far as just like meeting someone like just at a bar who just happens to be getting a drink and happens to be a trans person just existing in the real world, that's not really something that you see above like the millennial generation that much. So like it's been really cool to, you know, and again, we've only been a band for like a year, but like, you know, we have some fans here. We have these fans out in Beaumont too.
Shout out Beaumont.
Like, there's all these.
April 26th, goth night at the art studio. I know you guys are going to go crazy. Please don't punch our friends' kids again.
There's all these little queer kids who just like, you know, like especially in the current climate, having someone tell you that they like look up to you, right? Like, and having someone tell you that like you're any, like if me playing these songs I've written like actually has some impact in like making someone feel like maybe things are gonna be okay, right? Like it's the coolest thing, honestly. Like it
doesn't matter how much money you make on a door, how much merch you sell, how many. I don't care. Like I was telling Taylor the other day, like I will be able, the interaction I had with that girl after this show, with as stressful as the lead up for this show was, like I will be riding that high for the rest of the year.
Oh yeah,
easy.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like, you know, any like another part of that as far as like talking about others, not a lot of like I don't really have. There's not really like trans women that I can look at and get an idea of what I'm going to look like when I'm 70. You know what I mean? Like, so the idea that somebody who, you know, to like an 18-year-old, I'm sure I look like I'm 70 at this point, right? And like, but the idea that like to some like little baby, like fucking college age trans person, the idea that they can like look at people, not just us, but like our generation as a whole, and like have an idea of what being like a, you know, a non-famous trans person in your 30s looks like, and then by then look at us and see their 50s or whatever, right? Like that is,
I mean, that's such
a I feel really blessed to be able to be that for someone, and especially like in the current climate. It's like, you know, I don't blame anybody who's trying to get out, and admittedly I want to get out too, but like while I'm here, it's like I'm really thankful that I can be part of, you know, like joy is resistance, you know what I mean? Like it just being here and being alive and finding moments where none of the shit going on outside matters for a few hours is like such a huge part of survival, and of like, you know, I don't give a shit X, Y, and Z thing you try to do to scare me. I'm still gonna be some giant queer screaming about how much I hate you on stage, and like if I have to get a megaphone and like, you know, if I have to build the fucking Bluesmobile, I will do it.
Oh my god!
And I will terrorize y'all forever with the fact that maybe that would be a really cool way to do like the shred the deck like militia show thing, but instead you show up in a legally distinct like it's like
oh wait, can we also get chased by a bunch of Illinois cops?
Instead of being an old cop car, it's like an old fire marshal's SUV or something. Just like very slightly legally distinct. We're on a mission from Dog and such.
Well, for me, like a big thing that I think, like I'll get too, is just having a peer of this child's father. You know, it's like, here's my dad, and here's someone who plays shows in the same group. It has to make like going to shows feel safer, more accepting, to be like,
I mean, yeah. Like
additionally, shout out to Trip 6, because honestly, Trip 6 is one of the, like, Trip 6 is such an incredibly safe place. Summer and Cam do a fantastic job of running it, and not only to mention that like Summer is queer, like Trip 6 is queer owned, right? Mm-hmm. And like I I mean, even people that I know that are like world touring musicians have said like, no, Trip Six is like special. There's something really, really unique about like the level of just like
they get it.
the fact that not
That's
even
all
like
it is.
queers all feel safe there, but like it's such a safe place for women in general.
Yeah.
And like it is just such an uplifting and like powerful place to be.
I mean, there
And
was
I
a
think
time
there's-
earlier in the year when Summer reached out to like a ton of us who are femme presenting female within the music scene. It was just like, hey, I know a lot of you guys are probably having a hard time right now.
this was like around the election, you know.
Yeah, and she
Yeah.
was like, we don't have anything scheduled on these days, so let's figure out a day for everybody to come. And so she had a whole night where it was just everybody shows up at the venue and like they had karaoke going and everybody kind of brought a potluck and just had like a little, I don't know, just
We
like
had multiple cheesemongers show up, so every time it's like the most delicious
Yeah.
cheese spread you've ever seen.
It's a pretty, I mean, if you're thinking
Also-
about moving to
also-
Texas, if you're into punk rock and cheese, there's at least one place to go.
Also worth noting that Trip Six's bathroom is like Bucky's quality.
Oh, dude,
it's like
so
it's
nice.
like
I heard. I didn't
We had
Yeah.
to, we literally had to make it look dirtier to use the bathroom for our EP artwork.
the artwork on our EP is shot in the Trip Six bathroom, and yeah, so like we used like some fake blood, right, and like ran some of it on the toilet seat, and like some of it dripped into the bowl and everything, and then so we get all the shots, and then we're like hurriedly like cleaning the hell out of it because we're like, dude, we cannot like I'm like
Yeah, no,
genuinely every
100%.
time-
We felt bad because the toilet was so clean, and we're like, no, we've just stained the toilet.
Trip Six's toilet, I think, is cleaner than like 9 out of 10 of my friends.
I was going to say, I think it's cleaner than the one at my house right now.
it's unbelievable because like that's always the thing that scares me about DIY venues is having to use the restroom.
That's the one
Yeah.
thing I love about Trip is I know I can always be there.
Yeah, I not to go off about it too much, but like that is if you have a DIY venue and a clean bathroom, it's like literally heaven. Like
Yes.
who cares?
Yeah.
There's nothing else to get right. You
We're
got
halfway
the
there,
two
baby.
things done.
Exactly. So I really enjoyed going to see you guys this weekend. I'd never been to Trip Six before.
But everyone we knew from that scene were just like
Yeah,
the
we
coolest
knew
people.
a whole bunch of people there when we got there.
We were really happy to see y'all also.
Yeah, it was cool. I know you had a lot going on with your birthday weekend and everything like that.
That's what we do is we go see music.
Fair enough.
Like,
Yeah, fair.
we drag him.
Yeah,
everywhere
poppers
on
were
tour.
good too, man. They were.
I love
Poppers are so good.
So
dude.
my wife
Shout out to-
loves the guys in Poppers so much, and like we were already thinking about trying to reach out to them when we were booking this show. And Amber was like, "You're booking Poppers, right?"
Nice.
So I was like,
especially,
"Okay, I
like-
guess I have to now."
The one thing, and shout out to Poppers, shout out to Toxic Origin as well.
Oh, and Roxy grabs the duck.
and
They jumped
Roxy
on
grabs the
at the
duck,
very
like-
last minute to help us out.
all the bands that night were so good, and yeah, I don't know, that show was really it was really special. It was a really good night.
I don't know if anybody's ever told you this, but your voice, you have such, you're like, you have this anguish when you sing. It like, it almost
She has
breaks
such
my
this.
heart.
She has this in like this such insane frenetic energy when she's on stage. She is one bad glance away from a nervous breakdown, right?
So
And like, but
so the
it
thing
makes
for me,
sense.
Yeah.
So on like a larger philosophical level, I really disagree with the tortured artist concept. I hate the fact that sometimes you'll see people who feel like they need to be like, you know, massively racked with depression and blah, blah, blah to like be able to write, right? I hate seeing that because I think it leads people, like the vast majority of people, no matter what your writing voice is, you're going to do better work when you're happy, right? You're going to do better work when you're not struggling to like feed yourself in the morning and stuff like that. But all that being said, it's like my voice is very, I mean, you know, I came from an emo background, and I think a lot of my voice is very like emo, like diary centric stuff, very like, here's what I've been through, here's how I feel about it, here's what, you know, like sometimes it's very like, here's what you did to me, right? I've gotten away from this a little bit, but as I've grown as a songwriter, but a lot of where I started was very like breakup songs, like you ruined me, right?
Yes, absolutely.
but again, it's like without getting into too much of my lore or whatever, I've been through a lot, right? I had a shitty childhood, and my adult life has not been a lot better. And then I transitioned because I thought maybe I wanted things to get weirder. I mean, realistically, things have gotten better since I transitioned as far as every.
Right.
Well, that's the thing, right? Is that like transitioning, like, because people, especially people who are like clearly trans, but like aren't sure if they want to take the leap yet. The thing is, they're always like, is it worth it? And it's like, yeah, dude, it's so life-changingly great that you're willing to put up with all the bullshit about it, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Even in like the current climate, like nobody's ever gonna have a second thought about like detransitioning or anything.
I always
like,
explain it like the highs are so much higher and the lows are so much lower, but it's so worth it.
And so like, and the other thing is that just genuinely as a songwriter, I kind of feel like, and this probably applies to every other type of writing too, but I'm not as versed in like prose or anything. But like, I feel like if you find a voice that people are connecting with, like that's the biggest hump in making any kind of writing. And I think you should kind of just like, not necessarily stick to it, like you're not allowed to change, but for me, I was like, okay, like my voice, I think, is very like yeah, just kind of mournful, like anguished, like I hate what's going on, I hate what's in my head, I need to get it out.
Well,
right?
I mean,
angry,
and like, and the thing is that like, because like the emo artists that I grew up listening to, like so many of them gave me words for things I felt that I didn't know how to describe yet, right? And I think that's kind of what's led to me now. Like my goal with like what I'm writing is, if someone else is going through what I'm going through or what I've been through, like I want to codify what you're going through and give you words for it the same way that people gave me words for what I was going through, right? And yeah, I don't know. I just the other thing that boils down to it is that I think one of the only times anybody ever sees me like completely stone cold sober in public is when I'm playing a Blade Job show. Because I very, very specifically don't drink. I don't ingest like anything for like 24 hours before the show. So then I'm just like freaking out and like manic and insane on stage. And like I have a friend who's been to enough of our shows that she knows that like the second we get off stage, she'll have like a joint already lit in the backyard, and I'm like still huffing and puffing from singing the last song, and I'm like, no, give it to me. Right?
So is this the first band you ever have led?
So I had a band during COVID, because I lived in a punk house. I lived with a drummer, and then like eventually once vaccines started rolling out and everything, we brought our bassist around. And actually the 3 songs on the EP were originally written in a different band. They were originally written when I was in like a 3-piece emo band back in like 2020, 2021. We played one house show and then we broke up in very, very emo tradition. But so, when we started talking about forming Blade Job, I was like, well, this band never got off the ground, but I was like, the 3, Sydney, Lovesick, and Claustrophiliac, those 3 songs, I was like, these are so good. Nobody's heard them yet. Like, I don't want to give up on these. And also for anybody who's tried to start a band, those first few originals are a brutal step.
Also,
so
really,
I was
it's
like,
nice
hey,
to have something and be like, hey, this is the sound that we are.
Yeah, I was able to send them stuff that wasn't.
Jump off from.
I was able to send them stuff that was like finished songs. Like it had all been recorded for an album, it just hadn't been released. And so we were able to kind of learn stuff that I'd written originally, as you would learn a cover with like a full written song to kind of decide your take on.
And
right?
Obviously, there's tweaks and little musical
these
revisions, and like the musical
parts.
parts are different because it's different musicians. Not like vastly different, but we didn't approach it as like, here's this recording, we're just gonna do a carbon copy of this recording.
But as far as really getting going, this is the first band I've fronted more than like, this is the first band I've fronted that I would say got to the point of being a real band. You know what I mean? Because I mean, like, and I don't know, it's been really cool because again, it's like I think that first band where you're really like going, and especially for how I write, so much of my stuff is very like personal and very, I mean, honestly, it's kind of just trauma dumping, but again, it's emo.
That's
like,
what writing's supposed to be, right?
Yeah.
Right.
That's if that's not what writing is supposed to be, then I'm in trouble. But yeah, so like, especially for stuff like that, it's like when you're not only pouring all this effort into this song as far as like the mechanics of just how hard it is to write a song, right? But then beyond that, when you're also like, hey, this song is also like a story of like Lovesick off the EP is about how you get addicted to the ups and downs of abusive relationships, and then it feels like fucking getting clean when you try to get away from one, right? And like to be playing a song that's like that emotionally vulnerable, and to not only be worried about like to not only be worried about people connecting with it just musically, right? But then to also be like going out there and like talking about this stuff and being like, hey man, here's some like, you know, admittedly a lot of my songs are about like the darkest stuff I've been through, because that's what, you know, that's what I need to talk about somewhere, right? And but I mean, everybody's been so like, I'm blown away by the amount of support we've gotten from people for Blade Job, and like not only the amount of support I've gotten personally from like all my friends showing up and everything, but then like, you know, like stuff like the just random people coming up and telling us they love us, right? Whether it's like some little queer kid who has like somebody to look up to, or whether it's just like some dude that I haven't, you know, met in the punk scene yet who just really likes our Jawbreaker cover or whatever. It's like we have so many people come up to us, and like I mean, and again, like
it's just so weird.
I don't want to be conceited, but it's like, again, we played in such a hugely, like every band in Houston feels like they were gigging on Saturday, and the fact that we had so many
like
people show
shows.
out.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, Doom and Gloom was at the end. That might be the best festival lineup
we were
see all
literally.
year in
I
the
mean,
alt
we
scene.
were
and like
we were competing against like an official Trans Day of Visibility show. That night.
Actually, when we
so
booked
I was
that,
fully prepared to show up and just see the handful of friends that I knew were going to show up no matter what. But
instead, like, you know, everybody showed out, and I mean, I will say a little bit of credit to us. No matter what we were competing against, like Blade Job, Poppers, Toxic Origin, and then Roxy Grabs Without Closing. It's like that is a solid lineup. We did put together a good show.
Like, to circle back to you talking about people connecting with it, it's just been really surprising to me because it's so personal and so.
Well, but that's the thing.
No.
I put a lot of effort into writing where like I don't know if you remember when Solomon joined, right?
Yeah,
but
everybody like pulls different stuff from it. Yeah.
So Claustrophiliac is Claustrophiliac's like a big dumb stompy rock song, and fittingly for a big dumb stompy rock song, it is about sex, right? But it was really funny because, like, you know, I wrote this song about like sex and bondage or whatever. It feels kind of milquetoast to be talking about
bondage, you know, whatever.
But I say all that to say that, like, I wrote this song, and then our drummer Solomon like took it as this like anthem for like, yeah, no, I don't want to go out, I just want to get high in my room, right? Which, don't get me wrong, I love not leaving my room and getting high. It's like my favorite thing to do. But like I put a lot of effort into the way that I write songs. I want it to be like if you've been through the exact thing that I've been through, then it's like, you know exactly what it is. But then at the same time, I want what I write to kind of have like a universal, like, there's no bigger compliment to me as a writer than someone really connecting with your song and taking it to mean something completely different than you meant.
And that's been my biggest takeaway, because I was expecting us to literally like just play to crowds of people who had like the same life experience as us, right? When you put yourself out there and you like, regardless of if we wanted to be a queer band, we have two trans women over 6 feet fronting the band, basically. Like, we're gonna be a queer band. And so I've just been really blown away by the reception that we've gotten, like, from the scene as a whole, because I wasn't expecting so many people who didn't share the same experience to really connect with it and take different stuff from it, you know? And like, I recognize obviously that's music, but Like it is weird though when you look at it and you're like, this is so deeply personal and so deeply like down to the individual, and it's just really interesting to see, like, at the end of that show on Saturday, we played a new song called Say My Name, which like Taylor ended up writing after I basically went down a rabbit hole about this phenomenon of riot dogs, which is basically like when people are rioting or protesting or doing like these long held sort of like public occupations.
Not so much the kind of stuff you see in like North America, but stuff you see a lot more in.
You'll see a lot. There's this thing.
Police are a little too militarized to let that shit happen.
There's this thing that happens where like stray dogs will start to join the fray, and they will see the people exacting violence, and they will choose to defend the people who are having the violence enacted upon them, right? So these dogs will go into these situations where there's a riot or a protest or whatever, and a lot of times they will align themselves with the protesters because the only people being violent there are the people who are there to stop the protest. So I went down this rabbit hole and I sent Taylor all of this information, and I was like, I really like the idea of doing something either like from the point of view of a riot dog, or maybe we're writing a song about it, but we don't exactly, I don't want to, she's such a better writer than I am. I have to come to her with ideas and be like, I know if I write it, it's going to be too on the nose, and it's going to be like, like we were joking about it earlier, like that Family Guy thing where Ringo's like, I've written a song about an octopus. And they're just like,
the Beatles are like, yeah, man, this is going right up on the fridge. Right?
Good job, buddy.
But yeah, so she gave me that, and as usual, and I feel a little bad every time I do this, but as usual, I was like, oh, hey, remember that like fully fleshed out song idea you gave me? I'm like, well, it turned into one line in this song I wrote. But yeah, so I mean, I wrote this song, and the whole message of it is kind of, because again, it's like, you said like my voice is not like I'm at the vanguard, stand behind my shield, right? I'm not that person. I'm not a fighter, right? And so that was kind of the thing, was I wanted to write something that was very like resistant of everything that's happening, because how could you not, as an active queer musician right now, right? And so but every time I tried to write it as this like rah fight song, I'm like, that's not me, everything I write, even if it gets really fast, it's like anguished and like, it's not I mean, like, so I don't know. Anyway, the song ended up becoming this song about like, yes, I'm scared, I'm not a fighter, but like everything's fucked right now, and it's like, even though I don't want to fight, even though I've never wanted to fight, it's like I'm not going to step away from a fight that's being brought to my door, right? And it was one of those it's one of those things where like, as a musician, I don't think there's anything more horrifying than finishing a song and thinking you wrote something really good, because like, to me, the more that I love a song, the more terrified I am the first time you play it on stage.
Yeah, for
because
sure.
Especially with original stuff, like I feel really blessed that we play to, like I can calibrate if a song is working by like the cheers that it gets on stage. And so like, even within the first year, there's a couple originals where I'm like, dude, nobody really likes this song. And it's like, let's move on and like keep
it in our back pocket. Maybe we'll use it later. Maybe we'll come back and rework it.
And but it's so horrifying to have a song that you like really, really believe in, and then get on stage and be like, God, I hope people like this, right? Because like, it's not like, don't get me wrong, you liking something you made is important, but to me, I'm like, dude, I'm a pop artist, right? In the grand scheme of things, like, versus like, I'm not jazz or whatever, right? I am a pop artist. I am trying to make things that have like relatively broad mainstream appeal, and like ultimately, like, I feel blessed that people are coming to see me, and if people don't like a song I wrote, then I'm just gonna stop playing it for them, right? Because I want them to like the set list. I want, if somebody's gonna be a fan of my band, I want to like reward them with a show that they've been responding to and that they like. But so we played this song, Say My Name, and
wait, pause. So the first time she sends me the rough demo of the song, there's a part at the end where she finally says the line, Say My Name, and the song is like very stripped down. It's like just a little A-B bass line for the entire song, and
it's basically 2 chords.
Yeah,
for 4
it's
minutes.
A very, very, very stripped down 4-minute.
Back.
And so she gets to the part in the rough demo that's literally just her like on her phone with a guitar. and like I legitimately started crying, and this is the second time. The first song, the one that she mentioned earlier where we tried to do some acoustic stuff, like that one got me really hard too. And so she sends this one, and I'm like,
the funny thing
I'm basically
is that
like,
thematically
congratulations, you did it
similar.
again, you know? And they are very similar thematically, yes. But yeah, like we played this song, and like we got, you know, it's the end of the set, right? So you get like a smattering of applause. We did literally just like, we had this insane high energy vibe, and then we basically are like, we are bringing it down, and we brought it down, and we get this like smattering of applause, and I'm kind of like, I don't know.
I wouldn't call it a smattering. People popped off pretty
It's hard.
for
It's
the
hard.
band. But it's hard to tell if it's
Right.
cheering for that song or the end of the set list.
Right. It's hard to tell
It's hard to
at the end of
they're
the
cheering
set.
for you, kind of.
So we get off stage.
And like half of like, yeah, like I talked to 5 or 6 different people. Pretty much every trans person that I talked to that was there was like, fuck you, that made me cry. And I was like, all right, it worked. Like,
Yeah.
I'm like, it's a good song.
Like our friend, I guess I would say our friend at this point, Gwyn.
Oh yeah, Gwen's
like,
cool as fuck.
Well, I haven't really hung out with her a whole lot. Whatever.
The Royal R.
Yeah, our friend.
Friend of the band.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah, you know, like
Yeah, I just
Taylor said she was looking for her immediately after the set just to be like, hey, you know, what did you think?
Well,
And
I realistically, like, we were in the backyard and I was like smoking weed with somebody, and then Gwyn walked by, and you know, when you see a friend and you like nod if they want to join the circle, right? And then, but she like kind of fucked off and just went and sat in the back of the venue, and I was like, all right. And then I talked to her later, and she's like, yeah, no, I heard that song and I had to be alone with my thoughts for a minute. And I was like, God damn, like I wrote a not to you know, I was like, not to be conceited, but I'm doing like I'm brushing a little dirt off my shoulder when I hear that, right?
Nailed it.
But you also have to understand that this is after we didn't play a show for 3 months before this. We really wanted to tease the EP release. Then leading up to the release, there was a lot of like logistical stuff going on that was like a big headache. We were really concerned that we weren't even going to have people to play.
This is like the first show that we had booked primarily, and like anybody, your first show that you book, I feel like you're like, oh my god.
Yeah, so I mean,
never
we were
mind.
going into
book a
this
show again, right?
We were going into this being like, God, like we hope we even get paid off the door tonight, you know? And then to go from, oh man, I hope the door makes enough money so we can get paid tonight, to
I mean,
having multiple people be like, wow, that song really connected with me.
Well, not only that, like there were some other younger queer folks that I had met like a week and a half ago at the Holy Locust show.
Oh yeah.
And so they come out, right? And like they made little like candy bracelets, like the way that you put the band names, and they did them for everyone, right? So like Poppers and Toxic Origin got some too. Aww. But so
I have been wearing mine nonstop.
I know,
Well,
I
I
saw
say
you post it.
I take that. I wore it nonstop until you said something about breaking it in your sleep and being worried about that. And so
Yeah.
now I've been taking it off before bed.
yeah, mine are on like my little jewelry rack thing at home.
Dude,
but,
it will.
But yeah, so like it's
That's
just
my favorite
really,
thing
and
ever,
these same
is
people like
gifts
asked if they
from-
could keep our set lists, like when they saw them on the stage after the show, and I'm like, dude, that's a piece of cardboard I ripped off our merch box because I never remember to bring actual paper for set lists.
Yeah.
So like every set we play, it's like, oh, that sure is the back of a Busch Light case.
I
that
wonder which one of
the
them
Blade
took
Job
home.
set list is on.
I don't know if you caught this on stage, but when you wrote my set list, you omitted one of the songs.
Oh yeah.
And so when I came back from like switching my amps over, I was like, "What song are we on?" And you're you're like, "We're playing whatever it was." You're like,
It was Tell Me,
Yeah.
well, which is especially funny because Tell Me is the only song in the set where I don't have a guitar,
Right.
Where I just do like the front person thing. And so like that's especially confusing because I'm standing there looking at Andi like, hey, are you ready? And Andy's like, you don't even have your fucking guitar. Why are you looking at me like I'm not ready, right?
And then she's like, "We're playing Tell Me," and I look down at the set list and I'm like, "That's nowhere in the set list."
Beyond that, there was also right before we started, it was really funny. Andi was like shouting, like looking for me to get on stage so we could get our set started. And like I was over in the green room, and because like, you know, the set lists were in there, and so I went and grabbed the set lists. And one of our friends from another band was like rolling a joint and was like using one of our set, because it's just a piece of fucking cardboard laying on a table, right?
Right.
So like Andi, I'm listening to her on stage asking if anybody's seen me, and meanwhile my friend's like, dude, just let me finish rolling this joint. And it's like, it's the fattest joint I've ever seen. It's the fattest joint fight I've ever seen.
Yeah, I don't want to be rude.
Which is upsetting for multiple reasons. Because one, I'm like, that's going to take you a minute to pack properly, and I don't want to fuck it up because, I'm not trying to waste your weed. But two, I'm like, not only do I have to wait for you to finish rolling this, I can't even like try and like elbow in and be like, hey man, because I got to go play a fucking show. Right? So I got to finish watching you. I got to finish watching you bake this delicious cake, and then I got to go run a marathon. Right? And I just got to think about how you're in here eating cake while I'm running a marathon. Like, and meanwhile, like I'm literally listening to my bassist be like, where's Taylor? We want to start the set. And I'm like, fuck, like, and I'm like, I'm standing there and I'm like watching this dude roll while we're both listening to me get yelled at for being like late to the stage.
It was adorable. I was in the audience.
We're super professional, by the way.
For whatever reason, I think we play off the unprofessional stuff really well, which is good. But it's very funny because like sometimes we'll play sets where nothing goes wrong and people are like, man, y'all are really like on this shit. And other times we'll play sets where everything goes wrong and people are like, I love that you're just having fun with it. and I'm like, well, the good thing is I'm like, whichever way it goes, apparently we can roll. Right?
As long as you guys like it.
And it's entertaining.
Well, and like that's ultimately the thing about live music.
We're putting on a show.
Like,
that's
the most important skill as a live musician is to look cool when you fucked up super hard. Right? Like there's so many, like all of my favorite solos I've ever played, I completely botched the intro. Right? Yeah. Like they're ones where I just like it looked like I didn't even know how to play guitar for a handful of seconds. But then like I'll find some weird way to come out of the feedback and slide into the right note. And like not to bring it back to Victor Wooten, but I think he might have been the person who said that you're never more than a half step away from the right note.
Yeah, that is correct.
And brother, that needs to be written on my tombstone because that has saved my life. Like everybody's like, you do these really, like I've had people be like, do you fuck with Santana? Because they're like, you do these really long entry phrases where they're like, you're like a half step off of key for like half a measure. And it's like and everybody who's ever brought it up has compared it to Santana, how he will do like a really sour grace note and then go into a really pretty solo. And I don't have the heart to tell anyone that it's like, I thought it started on the 10th fret and it started on the 11th fret. And then I kind of just sold it really well. But like,
hey man,
but then again, it's like,
we're amateur jazz musicians.
Dude, it's all jazz at some point. Like
it's all jazz or crabs.
Yeah. Everything, yeah.
Okay,
evolution.
so because we brought up the bracelets, I have to ask this question. This was one of the questions I wanted to ask the other night. Who came up with the name?
So that was me.
Yeah, that was a Taylor thing.
So blade job is a wrestling term, like professional wrestling. It is when you take a chair shot to the head or whatever, you take like a little razor because not to break kayfabe, but like they're not actually busting each other's skulls open.
Cover your ears. Cover your ears.
Unless it's The Rock and Mick Foley in that One I Quit match. But
true, yeah.
Yeah.
Locked in.
No, all right. Whoa.
But yeah, so blade job is a term for when you just like, you would take a razor blade and like kind of covertly nick your forehead so that you bleed and you make it look like someone hit you with the chair hard enough to just like make your face explode in blood, right? But also being trans, like it obviously, like a lot of trans folks kind of have to take X, Y, or Z about healthcare into their own hands, right? And like nobody's out here like chopping their dick off in a DIY matter. That's Fox News bullshit. But like it does have this element of like,
you really just went right for it.
Of like, well, fuck it, dude. I'm being visible. It's day of visibility, and I am being visible.
But chopping their dick off, goddamn, going hard in the paint, man.
Dude, I got raised by
we're going for threes tonight. These are threes.
I was raised in like, dude, when I've never been able to sleep without the TV, and like I was forced to listen to like Fox News to go to sleep for like a decade as a child, right? So like I know all their whole playbook because I fucking memorized it as a child, right? So like I don't know, I try not to shy away from it because I'm like, no, all the shit that they say is like insane. But anyway, the point about Blade Job and kind of what ties into this is that I really fell in love with the name when I first came up with it, because I feel like my goal as like with this band is that I want us to be as scary as you find trans people in general, right? Like if you're one of those like Fox News brainworms, like this is the coming of, this is what they talked about in Revelations 3:27 or whatever shit, right? If you're one of those types, I want you to think that I am like one of the four horsemen. I want you to think I'm absolutely fucking terrifying. I want you to think I am the end of Western civilization. And if you're like a normal person, I want you to realize that we're just like making edgy jokes and having fun and singing about ex-girlfriends.
And maybe the bass player's kind of cute.
And it's like, I think Blade Job fits that really well, because again, it's like, yeah, we have like this imagery of like a razor blade, right? And it's like, it has this little bit of like edge to it. But again, it's like you get to know us and it's like, dude, this is a professional wrestling term. Like it's not that deep. You know what I mean? Like, and I don't know. The one tricky thing about the name was for a while, it was really tough to figure out. I was having trouble figuring out a logo that wasn't going to feel too edgy. And shout out to Josh John Robb from The Real McCoys. He made our logo. He absolutely killed it. It's such a good
Bayou
logo
City
that I'm a
Kids.
little sad that I can't wear the t-shirt because it's for my band. Right.
No, see, I don't
But,
care.
like,
wear it. I don't care.
I don't care.
Wear it all day.
I'm just like
not
I
at
said,
your own show, out at the grocery store. I don't care.
I told y'all I'm insufferable, right? But because for a while, you know, I was really trying to say, like, Machine Gun Kelly had just put out like the razor blade shaped signature guitar, and I was like, oh god, I was like, please, like the scariest, like, not to, you know, I'm not an elitist. Listen to what you like, blah blah blah.
Yeah, but you don't want to be conflated with that.
I know that we both call ourselves like emo musicians, but I feel pretty comfortable in saying I don't think there's a lot of crossover appeal between Blade Job and like TX2 or MGK or any of these like TikTok emo bands. And I would kind of like to keep it a little separate, right? But yeah, no, I mean, it is. We
are on TikTok, though.
We were struggling with names for a while. We had a few ideas that were just kind of whatever. And then as soon as any good band name, I think you come up with it. And then for me, I come up with it and then I'm immediately like Googling to see if it's taken.
Oh, yeah.
Right. And like, because I don't let myself get excited until I see that it's available. And I remember looking up Blade Job, and there was like one episode of a wrestling podcast from 2021.
They have the Instagram handle, by the way. That's why we're Blade Job Music everywhere. Okay. I think Facebook, we're still just Blade Job, but everything else is Blade Job Music.
But so like there was like one podcast episode from like the pandemic when everybody started a podcast, right? Even I tried to start one, although I think my idea was kind of good. But everybody thinks
we're not going to get into that. We're not.
Next time. That's next time.
But,
we don't have enough time.
But yeah, like so, you know, like, I don't know, the name
I like
took
it.
off.
So it kind of sounds violent, but then once you realize,
right, there's,
that,
I mean,
you're doing it to yourself,
like, it's just,
so.
it's kind of, you know, to call back to what she said about the music, like, there's a bunch of different ways you can take that name. It can be about plastic surgery. It can be about DIY transgender stuff. It can be about wrestling. It can be about
but then at the same time, it can
like,
also be like, don't
West
fuck
Side
with
Story.
me, right?
Right, exactly. It could,
and I think like I said, I'm really happy that I think it gets scarier the more weird you are about trans people.
Oh, for sure.
And that's
sure.
like perfect to me. If you think I'm horrifying, then yeah, cool. Like if you want me to be your boogeyman, I will be the best goddamn boogeyman I can.
Like it doesn't help that we couldn't help ourselves with the EP artwork. So we had the show around Christmas, also at Trip 6. While we're there on stage, I had bought like a thing of plywood basically, and we had during our set, a bunch of the people that were there, I went and got a bunch of paint from an art supply store, and they all just tagged this piece of wood for us.
Well, so we had so basically I was trying to make reference to this one dumb image on the internet of which had like a bathroom stall wall with like a glory hole cut in it, but then the joke of the comic is that somebody's reaching through the glory hole with like a engagement ring in a box, right? And so I wanted to make reference to that because that's like one of my favorite comics I've ever seen. But the thing was, like, Trip 6 has, it's one toilet. It doesn't have like stall walls, right? So we were
we've established it's a nice bathroom.
We were like, well, let's shoot it at Trip 6 and we can just like buy a sheet of plywood and just drill our own hole in it, right? And so we did that, but like I wanted it to look like a real punk bathroom, right? Because like punk, like the coolest thing about punk venues is the bathroom graffiti generally. And so we were playing during 666 Miss, and like during the set, we had the thing like kind of up front leaning against the stage right below me, and we had a bunch of paint markers and a bunch of like spray paint, and we just told everybody like, hey, come up, draw in here, like, dude, tag it like you would any other punk bathroom, right? Like, please help us do this so that we can do our EP. And it ended up like a masterpiece. The one thing that I did not think of beforehand was we did this during like the 4th or 5th last song in our set. And so I'm standing right above where everybody's doing all of this and I'm singing the whole time, right? And I didn't think about it, but like about a minute into the next song we were playing, when like the really heavy breathing pattern starts, I'm like, oh fuck, I'm just huffing paint fumes. Because everybody is, multiple people have like paint markers and spray paint and everything, and they're all 3 feet from me and below me, so it's all just
coming right to you.
So like we get through
night.
and we're at like the end of the set and people are still tagging it, and I'm genuinely like getting a little stoned off of how much paint I've been. I'm like, shit, man, we should have covered that Ramones song. It would have been perfect, right? But no, I mean, yeah, I don't know. It's been
I dig it.
Yeah, it's been cool.
And I'm glad that Andi, 2 years. It took you 2 years to talk Taylor into the
Oh, no. So it was about, I don't know, it was about maybe 6 months after I started getting a little antsy, you know? And I would just kind of like poke and prod, and like the big, like she was like, you know.
The big thing was I just didn't want to have to find a drummer. I'm going to be so real with you.
I mean, it's so hard to, you guys know how it goes.
Well, yeah, and I guess we are hanging out with a band that has foregone the need for a drummer, so fair enough. Y'all did it smart,
right?
But yeah, so like for a long time, you know, eventually, because like I really wanted Solomon to play drums for it. Honestly, he's our drummer in BCK, and he's a monster, and I wanted to. And you know, I was like, we had already bonded a lot on like Queens of the Stone Age stuff, and I was like, dude, you're gonna like what I write. I was like, and we'll work really well. And finally, I think it was, I forget what show it was, but after some show Bayou City Kids played at Trip 6 where Solomon finally agreed. And then at first it was just like we'd fuck around for an hour after BCK practice, and then we added Andi about a month into us playing as a 3-piece and started practicing at his shed, because for once we were able, because we had the rare opportunity to add a band member and have scheduling get easier, which is of extreme rarity, right? Because like Andi does not have a neighbor who is completely militant about being an asshole about noise ordinances like this Andi does, right? Yeah, I don't know. I'm really thankful that you bugged me until I got off my butt and did it. I'm
good at that. Being annoying.
As with a lot of, well, I mean, it's the same reason that Andi runs all our socials.
It's the youngest sibling in me. I'm like, hey, poke.
Which is especially
I need
funny
attention, damn it.
Which is especially funny with like you being the oldest person in the band, that you were like by far the most. You're the most like little sistery about it.
It's so weird. Well, and that was like a whole other, like, I think I talked about that, but like, yeah, it's weird being in this, like,
for
you're a person in your
30s
and you go through like a second puberty where like not emotionally, but like hormonally, and then there are some mental changes where like you really do kind of like feel like you're back in that teenage space again. And there's, with everything that was happening in 2024 and the lead up and everything, it was just like I was just screaming to be able to have an outlet to say something. And here we are. And it's not like I was just said earlier, like we haven't even been a band for a year. We already have an EP out. I have bands reaching out to us from New Orleans and Ohio, and like we're already talking talking about.
We've been kicking around this idea of doing what I really want to call a Death Wish tour, where we like try, we go play like Mississippi and Louisiana, and like we find like these little like DIY trans.
Like we want to find the only safe venue in your shitty town, because last year when we played Beaumont, seeing those kids come out in Beaumont, and Beaumont's not even, it's an hour from Houston, but they're so far removed from the Houston music scene.
I mean, any oil and gas town is going to be a miserable place to be queer, honestly. To be anything other than like, whatever makes the company money is always going to be.
I just meant more along the lines of trying to make sure, like, I love Houston, I love the Houston scene, but playing in Beaumont, which is only an hour away, really showed me how rabid these kids are for music, especially music where they can see somebody like themselves.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And like, if you can go to, I know if there's a place in Beaumont that is willing to have, this sort of show that we played, then there's other places in these other small areas. There's probably certain towns that we straight up won't go to, like just out of pure safety factors. But if we can get there, if we can be safe when we're there, if we can stay safe afterwards, if the kids who come out can stay safe, like if we can make it work logistics and scheduling wise, like I am 100%, I'm in.
The funniest thing about calling it the Death Wish tour was realizing that I was like, Mississippi's actually a little less
it's
scary
way worse
place
here
to
in
be
Texas
trans
right
than
now.
It is in Texas,
like
right
we're in
now.
one of the worst places.
Joke.
So
like we have I have people who from the Bible Belt hitting us up, being like, "Man, it seems scary to be queer down there," and I'm like, "Shit, that's not good." I'm like, my homie from Oklahoma is like, "Dude, if you need a place to get to," and I'm like, if Oklahoma is being recommended as a place I'd be safer as a queer person, I'm like, shit's bad.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I don't know. That's the thing, right? It's just like, it sounds cheesy, but it really is like a punk rock ethos thing of like fucking the more you try and like stomp out cockroaches like us, you're just going to make our band look cooler.
Right.
Right. Like you're like at some point it's like, all right, man, like whatever. I'm always going to be here. Like fucking, trans people have existed since the fucking dawn of time, and will exist forever. It's not
throwing us in jail for showing you our ID isn't going to make us not exist.
It's not a thing that is ever really possible to be eradicated. And like, I mean, shit, man, when you look at like, there's ancient civilizations where like priestesses would there's ancient civilizations where priestesses would castrate themselves by like smashing their balls between two giant boulders to keep themselves from, because obviously like, synthesized estrogen didn't exist 5,000 years ago.
Right.
But so like there's these civilizations where people would just like, this became like a ritual of becoming like a soothsayer that people would like, because again, if you see someone who took a message from God that they needed to like crush their balls with a fucking boulder and like deliver messages to the people, like you're like realistically you're gonna listen to that person.
There's also
God
plenty
is
of
probably
cultures
talking to them, right?
Even removing God from the equation, there's plenty of cultures that would look at people like us and be like, yeah, these are people who have walked both paths. They have experience from both paths of life.
And and you don't see this as much in America as you do, or in the USA as you do in Canada, because Canada's a little more, which is sad to say, they're more respectful of Indigenous people considering what they've done. But like Two-Spirit is a thing, which granted
right.
I don't know a really extensive thing about, but Two-Spirit is essentially like this Native American concept of like a gender outside of man or woman that's existed this whole time. And it's like, dude, trans people have been on this continent longer than the fucking white man.
Right.
And again, we're going to be here forever. And it's like, it's not even a race of people that you can try to genocide, because it's just a fucking thing that happens in your brain. There could be no trans people on the planet. You still haven't gotten rid of us. We're going to come back.
Right.
Like, we really are like the cockroaches after nuclear war. Like, no matter what,
radiation only makes us stronger.
We're going to be here. And like, yeah, and actually, we all get stronger from the radiation.
Yeah. You play the next Fallout 4, it's just going to be a bunch of giant trans women running around New Vegas. Oh, wait, that's literally New Vegas.
That's a deep cut, yeah. Shout out to the greatest piece of trans artwork ever, Fallout New Vegas.
Got real nerdy with the video games earlier before we got on.
All right, y'all. We are getting to the limit of how long I'm willing to edit a podcast.
Yeah.
Oh no. We do like to talk.
I warned you I was gonna yap.
I'm so
No,
sorry.
we're good. I appreciate y'all coming because outside of music, we got to talk about like some real life stuff.
Yeah.
We have to talk about more music theory than any guests have ever talked about.
That's so crazy. I don't even think we get real into the theory, to be honest with you. I guess
But
I guess I know enough theory to know how little I know about theory.
Well, I mean, even if you're not talking about like black and white, like actual classroom music theory, I think.
Yeah. Well, and
Anyway,
we
we're
can talk
getting off
about
topic again.
Right? But it was great. We appreciate y'all coming. And when the next EP or full length drops, we'll have to come back and do this again.
Yes, for sure, for
Okay.
sure.
Also, shout out. When is band night?
Band night will be April 26th. So April 26th at the Art Studio in Beaumont.
And then we're also playing Houston Punk Fest. That's in May. I forget when that is, but it has like the
May
craziest.
31st.
Nice.
There you go.
Is it
And
the
it has
31st? Yeah, it's an insane
has-
lineup this year. They're going to
at
have
equal
2
parts.
stages at Equal Parts Brewery. So they're
Equal
going to have
Parts
bands going on
also
all
one
day.
of my favorite breweries in town. So
Amen.
come see us. Come say hey. Come talk to me about wrestling.
Yeah, we didn't talk about it at all during the podcast, but I've been going crazy these last couple of weeks making merch for the band. So when you come see us, if you come see us, we got stickers, we've got all sorts of stuff. I will hook you up and make a deal. It's free advertising for us. Please buy stickers. What is wrong with you? It's $5.
There's that one Simpsons bit where he's like it's like Bob Iger advertising Disneyland, and he like speaks really sweetly the whole time, and then at the end he's like, "Bring money." And like every time I talk about a show or like merch, that's always what I feel like. I'm like, yeah, man, we're all friends.
$10 at the door, cash only.
Please buy something. Anyway, thank y'all so much for having us. Genuinely, we were
Awesome.
we were super stoked. The instant y'all asked us, we were so excited to come out here. Also, happy birthday
Again.
It is her
Happy
birthday while we're
birthday.
recording this.
Happy birthday, Kim. Everybody at home
All right.
listening.
And on that note, Kim.
Bye, y'all.
All right, y'all, that does it for this week's episode, man. Hope y'all really enjoyed it. If you didn't learn something from this episode, you really didn't listen. Like, this is probably one of the better episodes we've ever done. We learned a lot, and we ended up hanging out for, I think, another 2 hours after the interview was over, talking with Andi and Taylor. Man, it was just really good time to hang out and talk to everybody. Just a good experience. Hope you go check them out when they're around town. They'll be back over at Trip 6. They'll be hitting the road before too long as well. Anyway, enough listening to us. We're going to kick it off with the first song from their EP called Pre-Op. Remember, check out all streaming services. This one's called Sydney. Hope you dig it. Talk to you later. Bye.
I had a dream I went